Democratic presidential candidate and former Congressman Beto O'Rourke gave his first major address to the country this morning. He's returning to the campaign trail today after spending time in his hometown of El Paso, Texas, following the mass shooting that killed 22. In his speech, O'Rourke took direct attack at the president and called for more than just a ban on assault weapons.
Not only do we need to end the sale of assault weapons and weapons of war that were designed for the battlefield and have no place in our communities, but we must, as a country, buy those weapons, take them off the streets altogether. There are millions of them today, and their ability to inspire terror, to make our kids and your kids afraid to walk into that classroom at Mesita or El Paso High, because we know as a country we've accepted the murder of 6- and 7-year-old children where they sat at school. We've accepted high school students being hunted down in the halls of these institutions like El Paso High, right behind me.
Well, just after Congressman O'Rourke spoke, Anne Marie and I spoke to Gromer Jeffers, a political writer for the Dallas Morning News, for more on O'Rourke's speech.
It's sort of a reset of sorts. It's an opportunity for him to reset his campaign, and he's decided, you know, he kept saying, I see now more clearly than ever sort of the course he has to take. In reality, he's been taking this course all along, using El Paso and that binational community as an example for the rest of the nation. He often says that Texas and El Paso should lead the way in solving some of these problems the nation has with immigration and race relations and all of that. And so he's basically today just resetting his campaign. Now, whether it will be enough, we'll see, because what has happened is he's become now sort of he's isolated himself as this candidate that's, you know, on just these issues alone, the El Paso shooting, gun control, and taking the race question directly to the president. He says that he's going to go directly at the source. So that's what he's doing. But in a field of 20-plus candidates, is that enough to get him to the next level, to get him out of single digits, to get him back in the game?
Yeah,
that's the question.
And I was also sort of thinking, you know, he cursed a little in his speech, and we know the president has cursed before, but there's a difference between Republican voters and Democratic voters, and sometimes, you know, what Republican voters are willing to sort of look the other way about, Democratic voters have a different idea of what a candidate should look and sound like, right? Not that cursing is like that huge of a deal, but, and he also really took direct aim at the president in terms of calling him a racist and you know, talking about how much he's fueling white supremacist sentiment in this country. Do you think that if he continues to speak like this, it will not only sort of be his voice, but he will force some of the more moderate Democratic candidates or the more moderate people running to also be more plain spoken when it comes to the president and accusations of racism?
That's exactly right, Anne Marie. You're right on target there. He will, because you see now the rest of the field, you know, is increasingly getting tougher in their rhetoric about Trump and against Trump. So he will force them to take more pointed stands against the president. Some of them are already doing that. And in the primary, that's probably what Democrats want to hear. He's not so much worried about the general election right now, but trying to make his way through the primary and stand out in this field. It is still large field. And he's qualified for the upcoming debates. So now the question is, how does he stand out? How does he separate himself from the rest of the pack? Most of them are down there, you know, 2% or less. So how does he get to the next level? How does he challenge Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren for that front runner status?
So let me ask you one question about his viability there, Gromer, because he did lose that race against Senator Ted Cruz, although for many, many years, Democrats have looked at the state of Texas they're just so thirsty for Texas, Democrats are, right? And every couple of years, there's a sense that perhaps it may become a blue state. What's your sense of Beto O'Rourke and the changing face of the demographics in Texas that make him such a viable candidate at the national level?
Well, what's interesting, Vlad, is before El Paso, before the shooting, he had began talking about how he can get Texas's electoral votes, about 38 electoral votes, put Texas in play, and block Donald Trump and the Republican path to the White House. That was his message in the debate in Detroit, and that had been his message, and it was going to be his message going forward. I can win Texas. Texas is in play. Certainly, Texas is more of a battleground than it's ever been. But you have to go back to Jimmy Carter in 1976. That's the last Democrat to win Texas. So the question is he the best Democrat in the field to win Texas? Perhaps, although Biden is leading in the state in the primary in some polls. Is Texas really in play? Well, the state is trending toward Democrats, but it's still, from an electoral standpoint, from a structural standpoint, it still leans Republican. So the question is, do Democrats, national Democrats, who have to put resources in the state, who have to decide where their money is going to go in this big country, will they pour resources into Texas? Do people really believe that it's really a battleground state? I think it's close. Is it at the tipping point, though? We'll see.
We want to play a little bit of sound for the people who may not have heard Beto's speech, and then we'll talk a little bit about what he had to say. He's commenting on the president here.
Sure.
I want to make clear to you, to us, to the country, that what he says and what he does not just offend our sensibilities or our understanding of the traditions of this great country. It changes who we are as a country. You do not get kids in cages until you've given people permission to put them in cages by calling them animals and seeking to dehumanize them.
I mean, he certainly seems sincere. I think,
you know, to me, that moment where he talked about talking to a young child who asked him, why does the president hate me, is as powerful of a moment that you're going to get in this race, at least as far as Beto O'Rourke is concerned, because frankly, there are a lot of people in this country who are starting to feel like that. It's not just children, it's adults who feel that the president, for whatever reason, seems to target them either because they are immigrants or because they are minorities. And that sentiment expressed by a child seems that Congressman O'Rourke is taking that and making it something that he needs to make people aware of.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the question for him is, it's a powerful moment now in August. Will the country, will voters still be paying attention to the dynamic that they are right now in, say, February and March, when people start to vote, when the Iowa caucuses take place and the early primary contests begin, on into March when you have Super Tuesday, when you have Texas and California? Will they have moved past El Paso and Ohio and all the other mass shootings? Will the focus be remain the way it is today in the future? We'll see. If it is, then that gives him a shot. If not, if the nation has moved on, if the debate is about something else, then he may have a problem.